Greetings and welcome to another impressions video here at Words About Games, and today we're going to be looking at Mortal Shell. Mortal Shell is a fantasy action role-playing game that casts you as a spirit creature in a shattered world. Guided by the vague words of some mysterious characters, you'll inhabit the bodies of fallen warriors as you journey through a dangerous land packed with a whole heap of enemies that want you dead. Mortal Shell is incredibly reminiscent of Dark Souls. I know, making Dark Souls comparisons when talking about games that aren't Dark Souls is practically a parody in this day and age. But look, Mortal Shell has been built to be somewhere between a love letter to From Software's fantasy series and a game that draws a great amount of inspiration from it. So I thought I'd better rip the plaster off as quickly as possible and just get it out of the way. Because there are going to be moments when I'm going to be referencing Dark Souls in this video. It feels almost impossible not to. With that out of the way, I'm going to dive into the game talking about its core combat mechanics. The thing you'll spend most of your time doing in the world of wherever you are. I didn't catch its name. As you explore the world, literally everything you find will try to kill you. From the loot playing guy, which seems like a nice moment until he puts the loot away and smashes you in the face with a club, to the frogs. Around every corner is an enemy or five looking to put you down for good. Fighting in Mortal Shell has its own rhythm. It's weighty, deliberately paced, and relies heavily on anticipating enemy attacks and either dodging them, parrying them, or blocking them. I spent my first hour playing the game through gritted teeth, as I was constantly murdered trying to get to grips with the incredibly demanding combat and high level of challenge. Once I started to get into the groove, my teeth started to unclench and I started to enjoy myself. Mostly. The mechanics of Mortal Shell's combat are excellently designed. Everything in this game feels incredibly deliberate. Combat animations are slick. Each swing of a weapon, whether by you or an enemy, feels like it has an appropriate heft behind it, and surviving a scrap feels really great. Mortal Shell's fighting style has been meticulously designed to feel punishing, but rewarding. It'll be familiar to anyone who's played that From Software game series, but with two quite noticeable twists. The first is hardening. Instead of having a traditional block, your character instead can harden themselves to avoid a single blow. If it's timed well, it can knock back an enemy, but you can also use it as a last-ditch maneuver to save you from a gigantic hit, or to cancel out of an ill-advised attack animation. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Hardening is on an admittedly generous cooldown, so you can't spam it, and if an enemy follows up one attack with another, you'll still be caught out and take damage. But it's a really neat mechanic and incredibly useful once you get into the rhythm of when to use it. The second mechanic is what happens when you die the first time. It can be easy to forget while running around Mortal Shell's engrossing world that the character you're playing isn't the big armoured hero on screen, but rather a spirit possessing the meat suit of said armoured hero. When your health is depleted, this spirit is launched from its vessel with one hit point. You can fight on in this form, or attempt to get back to your shell, re-inhabiting it for a second lease on life. If you die again without visiting a specific character who acts as a bonfire, then you'll reawaken without your collected experience. This latter mechanic is something you're going to get very accustomed to very quickly, because Mortal Shell is incredibly unforgiving. A high level of challenge and concentration are to be expected from a game that is like Souls, but this game takes that idea to a whole level. Any slip-up or lapse in concentration or mistake will likely result in your death, as pretty much every enemy I've encountered in the game can take you down in a couple of hits. Healing is an incredibly scarce resource. You can heal using some items. There's food that grants you HP at the cost of something else, like the resolve you need to power all but your basic attacks. There are mushrooms that you can find that heal you for a small amount of damage over a painfully long amount of time, but there's no Estus or Blood Vial equivalent. The best healing you have is if you can execute a difficult parry and have enough resolve built up to pull off a riposte. It's not something you can really rely on, since if you need healing badly enough, a mistimed parry is likely to kill you as it is to lead to the circumstances in which you can heal yourself. This, coupled with the sheer abundance of enemies in every direction you strike out in, results in a game that's satisfying to play, but can also feel like a slog to work through. There's very little respite in Mortal Shell. You'll spend a ton of time taking down a group of really tough enemies, only to find a bigger group 6 steps away, and then another, and then another, and another. It takes a long time to make much of any progress, because dying feels like an especially harsh punishment when you have to constantly work your way through so many enemies without taking more than a hit or two. The only reason I found and defeated the second boss in the game is because I lost my patience with trying to fight through the 30 plus enemies in my way, and I just decided to run past them all. I had to avoid a lot of loot and alternative areas on my way because Mortal Shell's enemies chase you for a really long time, which can result in them forming a fairly amusing conga line of doom behind you if you run far enough. Strangely, despite having a great deal of trouble reaching the second boss, I was then able to beat said boss on my first attempt. Boss fights in Mortal Shell are really well designed encounters that are a genuine pleasure to play and learn, but getting to them requires a great deal of effort. After spending an hour clearing out a relatively small area of the forest of enemies, I rounded a corner and I could see another equally as massive group. I sighed and put my PS4 into rest mode and conceded that I just didn't have the patience to take them on in that moment. I haven't gone back yet, and I'm not sure I ever will. Which is a shame because so much of Mortal Shell speaks to me. I really like the twist of character classes being the unoccupied dead bodies of heroes you find on your travels. The world looks excellent, and the different areas you can visit are visually distinct from one another. The atmosphere and lore-heavy storytelling in the game really intrigues me, and makes me want to try to piece together what's going on. And I like the progression system, with experience used to purchase new abilities, as opposed to just increasing some stats. But it really is a slog. Thanks to its combination of an overabundance of hard-hitting enemies that don't give you a second's respite, huge gaps between checkpoints, and a stingy approach to healing, Mortal Shell is a game I want to love, but it keeps me at arm's length. And in the end, it's a game I kind of like, but I can't play for too long at any given moment, lest the effort of traversing its world turn into frustration. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, consider sticking around here at Words About Games. Our content includes review impressions of games big and small, a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing the happenings in and around the games industry, weekly opinion videos, reactions, debate-driven top 5 and top 10 lists, a regular Hall of Fame series where we discuss our favourite games, and indie game spotlights. We also stream every Friday and Saturday at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames. Most importantly, have a brilliant day.